So, you want to join one of our multiplayer races, one of our BeamNG community races that we do pretty much every week, Saturdays, usually at either 8 AM CET, Central European Time, or at 10 PM Central European Time. Why those specific times? At this point, we do have people from New Zealand, Europe, Brazil, America, all over the place, and we figured out these times are the ones where no one has a time which is like 5 AM in the morning, right? So at least it's somewhere either in the night or like early night, evening, or afternoon for most people in the world, and thus it's the most humane, probably. But that might change in the future. But anyways, this video is now about how do you set up the car for that, right? Because there's always questions about this, and since we have more people joining, I do want to make this part more interesting, more understandable. I might even consider making this a real championship, which giving the winner of let's say 10 races, giving the overall winner even another prize, like with like real life stuff. But I'm considering that in the moment. I'll see how it goes. But now, how to join the race? Like in any case, you will need Beam, right? And you can also read stuff about this in the How to Join server and whatnot. We do roleplay a little bit in these races, since we do use that footage for the YouTube videos. But if you're not a big role player, it doesn't mean that you can join. You can just roleplay as the mysterious guy who doesn't speak. It's that easy. But the important stuff is, how do you set up the car? How do you build the car? And obviously, if you want to join, you will need Beam. And you need to set up BeamNG, which is just one Google search array. How to do it? It's free, but you need to buy BeamNG, of course. And then you can basically join. You don't need to have automation to join. It's recommended. Not even recommended, actually. You can just have Beam. And there's always automation players who will build a car, because there's two different ways to drive in the race. Either you build your own car with automation, which is a tool that allows you to build your car, and then there's people in Beam who will get one of those cars, and then we drive. And you can either drive with your own car that you build yourself in automation, or you get a sponsored car, and that goes even so far as some people just show up in the last minute. They get a car and they have to discuss with the other people who can get a car which ones they want, because there's cars who are later, there's cars who are heavier but have more horsepower, but maybe are worse in handling, and so on and so on. And then there's cars, and then there's people who get cars from someone who builds the car for them with even their own livery, and they get their name on the car, and the car is even being set up for them, because let's say they don't have a wheel and they drive with the keyboard and they want to have a very understeery car, and all these things are possible. But now let's go to the point of how do you actually build it. Let's take, for example, our coming up 1988 DTM race. Now, this is our FIA regulation book paper here now. Basically our rules that we base loosely on our campaign / the FIA rules of kind of that time period. Obviously nothing is historically correct, this is just a game, but it goes in the direction, follows the spirit of it. So DTM was a little bit like touring based car stuff. It was based because people wanted to have, in this case, a racing event, but also this was supposed to be a little bit marketing, right? Because the cars that you would see in DTM were actually cars that were also on the road. So since this is based on automation, you do need to have a couple of units sold, right? So since this is a 1989 race, you need to have at least 2,000 units sold until December 1989. And since some people have a hard time selling units, their base model is probably older than 1989, because it's unlikely that they just have the car why then and that year, and then instantly have the numbers, right? So the base model should be quite old. The base engine should also already have 160 horsepower, because you don't want to beat your base car some transporter or some city car with 50 horsepower, because that wouldn't qualify. And then there's people who don't have an automation car, and they can just make one in sandbox. So if you have a base car, in this case, where the base of it was introduced before 1990, and the engine base was introduced before 1989, and you already have 2,000 units sold, you can skip this part. For the people who don't have that, they can make a sandbox car. Obviously, it's recommended to have a campaign car, because campaign cars are always more tougher to bring in, because in the campaign you need to do other things, like making sure you're making enough money. That means your car is not set up for the best race, but actually in your car you have luxury interior. You're gonna have a radio inside the car. It's gonna make it heavier, and so on and so on. There's many things that you do different designing a car for sales than designing the car for being as fast as possible on the track. And yeah, if you don't have enough units sold until that point, you get a power penalty, which is something that we look into later for the actual power index. So let's go to the sandbox base car, and I will just make this real quick. The tech pool can only be +3. So this is the first thing that we have to do, making our homologation car in this case. So since we said the base model had to be introduced before 1990, that means we go to 1990. Obviously, more realistically, it would be if it would be like an 80s car, because let's say 1990 DTM, you would probably still see E30s, which are from the 80s, right? So probably something from mid 80s is probably something realistic, right? And this could be even something for our race, theoretically, right? Because in this case, DTM, it's a Tourenwagen thing. Now, it's not a hard rule, but just because I have the freedom of choice, I'm gonna build a car that was realistic for that, because DTM was like Mercedes 190e, BMW E30. Obviously, you could even take a sports coupe in this case, right? Because there's no hard rule against that, or like even a van, theoretically. In some races, there is these rules where it says it has to be coupe, it has to be convertible, it has to be whatever, like in regards to the body, but there's no hard rule for this now. But in the real DTM, there was obviously in the DTM there was no Ferraris, stuff like that, because it wasn't the real like family car. DTM was supposed to be like, oh, this is like your family or your day-to-day car that you can like actually realistically buy, but a bit more powerful. So now we have to go to the tech pool, be in one setting of your choice. So it's always helpful to read. Actually, the whole tech pool is 0. And one tech pool can be +3. And I already know that for me, that's gonna be in the engine later. So I'm gonna use my +3 for the engine. So since this is a touring car, mass-produced car, for me, I'm just gonna stay realistic. I'm gonna choose steel. Ladder just for more production units in this scenario. Steel, engine is gonna be front, and double wishbone. Now there's another important rule for this, because we are gonna have a total body cost of 7,500, right? So that means that our car needs to be realistically cheap, right? Because this is realistic, like a car for the touring wouldn't have been very expensive. So I'm gonna be careful with the quality in this, because right now there's no huge things in regards to this. Now this puts me now to the engine. It's a bit confusing, I guess, with the way the automation is doing this. It's throwing us now to the engine sandbox. But it's alright, we're just gonna look at the engine. So the engine has the same thing, also a limit of money, 1,800. And needs to be reasonably reliable, max 40 sliders +3, but we still needs to be under the money, of course. And Tech Pro +3, which we will be using right now. So +3, everything down. I'm gonna use this for the bottom end, I think, maybe. Yeah, let's see where I'm gonna use it. Probably for the bottom end, I think. Apply changes. So now there's nothing theoretically holding you back from doing a V12 other than the costs. And I certainly could do this, but since I'm gonna build a realistic touring car now, I'm gonna build an inline 6. Something that BMW or Mercedes would have built in this car. Even though only 30 was inline 4, I know that, but they certainly could have won in the 325i, which was 600. Okay. 3 liters, it sounds about right. I'm gonna. So, there we have it. Our engine is already over 160 horsepower. The crank needs to be a bit optimized here. And see, that's why it's so powerful to do this in Sandbox, because in the campaign I might not have forge works which I need for this, right? Or CNC workshop, and you can just click this. So this is a big thing. We see right now the engine is a bit too expensive, right? We have to stay under 1,800. So it's a bit too expensive, but you can see it's already quite powerful. Now I do want to be already a little bit powerful with this engine, because we do know that I want to be somewhere in the middle as usual. So I currently want to reach 360 horsepower, and that means that my base should be somewhat at around, let's say 250, 260, so I can reach the 360, because it cannot be stronger than 60% of base. Because historically you want to be close to the real car. I think in the DTM, like a E30 street version that you would buy, it was like 220 horsepower or something, and then in the DTM they would want 320, so that would maybe have 50% more horsepower, and so that's quite realistic. So if I have 250, I can certainly run 380 or something, so that's quite good. So I'm gonna make it up to 250 horsepower hopefully, but still decrease the material costs here. Let's see how I could do that. Oh, I'm just realizing, obviously, the engine base has to be lower. And now something is here that doesn't allow me to do that. Let's see what's wrong. Yeah, but how do I change the family yet? There we go. So the family, let's see. I usually don't do sandbox cars because I always have campaign. I just do this to follow up my campaign, so it's new to me to make this sandbox stuff here. For the engine and base, so bear with me here. But the base here has to be 1988 for the engine Okay, engine base can even, yeah, has to be 1988, but can be facelifted up to 1990, but doesn't really matter to us. This is mostly for campaign players who have maybe the car from like, oh, I have this car from 80, and they can face it up to 89. Sandbox players will be so close to it, it doesn't make any difference because they see, okay, the race is in 89, I have to do it before 88, so just do an 88 car. But the campaign player might have a car from, let's say, the 70s, and he sees, okay, that might fit into the DTM regulations. Then he can take that car from the campaign, export it, and make a facelift in 88. For us, it doesn't matter. We're just gonna do the engine now because it's based here 88, and we're just gonna do that. And let's go. So we are now below 1,800 euro dollars, and we do 220 horsepower. I just did this real quick now. I could obviously do this probably to 250 or higher. Emissions look okay as well, but this is something we could tune later. So now we can do the base car. So only rule was to not have the base car made out of fiberglass or carbon, which obviously makes total sense because it's a mass-produced car, even to a point you could say aluminium, to like kind of get the point of like that this is a mass-produced car. But yeah, it's okay to have aluminium, of course. Also keep in mind we have no warnings for the engine, and it's also reasonably reliable at 62. This is another thing. Obviously the engine has to always be reasonably reliable for the base car, because it doesn't make sense to have an engine that is like 40 or 30 reliability and you're supposed to have the base car as a Tourenwagen, which is like a base car, the bread and butter for the everyman guy. It's, yeah, it's okay if the base car is a GT1 car, which is a hypercar. It doesn't matter if it's unreliable. For this, it has to be reliable. Okay. So let's get into this. I think the amount of money that is allowed for this was 7,500 exactly. So obviously you're gonna design this, you're gonna make it look nice, you're gonna put nice spoilers because it's a DTM car, and downforce and all these nice things. And you're gonna do it much better than what I'm doing here. You're gonna put a nice spoiler on it, and you're gonna put a nice lip for the front downforce and all the good stuff, right? Not as ugly as I'm doing it now, but you gotta get the idea. And then there's no rules. Again, we're just gonna do it to 7,500. Okay. It's good to know that you cannot change the differential later, and the drive type and the gearbox. So this is something where it already should be probably an LSD and like something that would work for a race. The tires are usually always normed, so there's usually a specific tire choice you can take later, but for now this is obviously totally fine to do whatever you want as long as it's within the rules. Also, the brakes are totally free to be changed later, so you can just put some crap brakes here, it doesn't really matter. Just in the front, so I'm gonna put it in the back. make it lighter as well, since we do have the car quite fast, quite heavy, and it's not allowed to change this later for free. I think the bulk of the money comes from the wheels, for some reason. Material costs. Suspension is expensive, and the wheels. And the interior. So we are at 7,500, and I'm quite sure that with a bit of time you can actually optimize this to have a car that is much better in regards to all these things, like kilograms and better weight and better price, and also that it's realistically being sold in a certain thing. But that's automation. There's one little thing off and that shows all red. Then you change the setup of the suspension, and it's the same damn car, and it's all of a sudden extremely well. So we're gonna just use this and export this as our DTM base car. Let's just check real quick that we're also within the rules of this. So we take blue plus V, that's what we did, max 47 plus V, so we did as well. Engine was perfectly reliable, has no warnings, emissions must be met, so this is another thing we have to do real quick. Engine total cost 1,900, body total cost 7,500. We met all these things. If we check it again, statistics, detail stats, total car, until cost 7,500. I think it's shown here as well. Yes, the material costs. So 7,500, 1,800. We're way well below that amount. Now let's check real quick for the emissions. No, those always have to be reasonably met, so they should be somewhat green in all of them. If the last little bit is yellow, that's totally fine. But yeah, it should be somewhat there. By the way, the fuel, the base fuel is always unleaded or leaded. Whatever you usually have in your campaign is like something between 91 and 98, and that's pretty much it. Okay, I understand now from watching my own pre-play, it added up some other costs, not just together, I think. Yeah, okay, here, so the material costs are 1,800. So now we just gotta make sure they are not that low. So obviously the curve is completely cursed, but it's not the point right now. It's all about just getting some max power so that the final car can be much faster, much more power in the end, legally. Because obviously if the base car is 100 horsepower, you cannot make a 300 horsepower car. This can only be plus 3. I'm just seeing this now. Stake there. See if the emissions are still there. Okay, that's good. Just gotta have a look on the emissions. I'm just maxing out this as much as I can, which in my material costs there. So perfect, 230 horsepower, 1800 material cost, emission levels are met. This is all green. See if there's a little red dot here, that's fine because we're all passing it in every country. That's totally fine. And now we have the base car ready, I would say. Let's go again into statistics, the description. Where is it? There it is. I was blind the whole time. So here it is. Total 8,700, 1,800 for the engine, and 7,500 for the car. We're actually quite below now, so it's totally fine. So perfect. We made that. So we have the base, and now from this base we're gonna make the thing and we're gonna clone it. And this is gonna be the DTM race version, right? So obviously we're gonna put proper spoiler on it, and we're gonna make it white and nice stickers, and gonna make it look real cool. Which we're not gonna do right now because I got the time for all that now. But let's have a look into the regulations for what is allowed for this. So the body can be made lighter. Now you don't have to worry about money anymore, which is amazing, right? So we can make it lighter with 5 points. Chassis section, moving entertainment, safety, accuracy, setting interiors race. Slightly lighter is actually allowed in this way. Sometimes it's not this way. I already used it prior to make the car lighter because I wasn't sure if that's allowed. So that's why I made the base car lighter. But because it's very expensive, we wouldn't even have to do that. We could have even made it more comfortable, more heavy, thus selling it into actual different categories. So let's start with this. Moving entertainment, setting interior to race, losing the seats, putting the quality up by 3. Body can be made lighter within chassis section. Moving entertainment, that's not trim body section, but it's car model chassis section. We can unlock this time only, just for moving the quality up by 5. That's it. Obviously not allowed to touch anything of this here. Bring it back. And that's that. The slider to lighter is allowed. So I'm gonna set this to 100%. To lighter, by the way, not heavier, because if you want to make the race version, you're gonna make it lighter by throwing out everything that you have. The weight bias can only be changed for cars 1,200 kilos after weight reduction, the rule says. So our cars right now is 1,235. Your cars probably not, because we made some aluminum car or something. We have a steel car, so it's quite heavy. So after all these measurements, we are allowed to move the weight distribution to put the engine even more to the rear, which we already did in the past. As you know, we already done this in the past because I didn't know it was allowed, so I already was prepared for this. So drivetrain type, differentials, power speed, gearbox type must remain, but the weight bias can be changed to, if the car is over 1,200, that's what we did. Suspension sliders tuning can also be altered. So obviously we're not allowed to touch any of this here, but we're allowed to obviously set up the car now and make it actually proper, so it doesn't oversteer so much. And I mean, for me personally, the more understeer the better usually, because otherwise it's pretty much undrivable, at least to me. Good. So that's that. Now we can put a big old ring on it. And we can change the gearing as well for the gearbox. that's something we're gonna do after we change the engine. So let's go to the engine right now and see what we can do right there. The engine cannot be stronger than 60% of the car. So we have a base engine of 230. So 60% of that. And this will allow us to have 370 horsepower max, which is pretty much what I was aiming for, because that allows us to be kind of like 1000 kilo and stuff like that, which I think we can reach pretty nicely. So we are allowed to change the rev limiter, we are allowed to change the displacement, increase stroke and bores to a certain limit. I show that now how that works. Compression 20%, cam profile 30%, springs lifted 30%, intake we can do whatever we want, exhaust, race headers, straight exhaust, steel mufflers, no regards for the whole emission nonsense. Supercharger only if the base car had it. Since we don't have that, we cannot do that. The fuel system is also allowed to be changed, so let's do this. So we're not allowed to change anything here, obviously, because it's the whole block header and all that nonsense. We're not allowed to change anything then, but we can up bore, down bore, decrease the stroke and stuff like this here. So we can actually do this, so that we have more, and we are also allowed to increase the compression. Don't think it will do much. We're allowed to increase the cam profile by 30. And now we're allowed to increase the rev limit as well, as much as we want. So now we are also allowed to increase the intake. So we can change this to whatever we want. Obviously we cannot be in the red, but okay, that's just the brakes, not for the engine, that's fine. Manifold changes are allowed too. Now exhaust, we can do race headers. And we're already over the power limit that we are legally allowed to do. Straight exhaust, zero mufflers. Fuel system, manifold changes, we did those already. Timing is adjustable. We can put the fuel to 98, which I think we did already, yeah. So we already have that. Obviously the fine tuning and making the curve nicer on this you can do yourself. But you can see we're already at the power limit that we wanted to reach. So we're already there. And keep in mind that right now you don't have to hit any emission levels anymore. So that doesn't really matter at this point. So that's that. So now we can go back to our body and we want to see that we can get this thing down to 1000 kilo if possible, because we are very heavy still, very heavy. Another important thing is that we have the correct tire size, and since we are in 1200 kilo right now, we could even go that high, but let's say we want to reach 1100 kilo. We could certainly make the engine more powerful theoretically, but the base engine was too low. So if you think a bit with the base engine, we could probably get there or make the base more light because it's very heavy. But yeah, let's just do 1000. Let's just for the sake of this. Let's say we sell for 1000 kilos, 260 horsepower, 225 tires. Then we're doing this. Since for the car, suspension sliders can be changed, but also the gearbox can be set to manual. Tires are to be set to race soft. This is very soft. Brakes are free and aerodynamics is free, and this is a big deal. So brakes are free. You are totally allowed to go at quality 15. You are allowed to keep in mind this changes the weight, but this is another thing that you can use to regulate the weight. So if you see, we're already much lighter because of that. I'm probably going to change this one though in the future, because I think it's cool and interesting that you have bad brakes, because it makes the whole driving dynamic much different if you have to like cool down your brakes and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely gonna use much lighter brakes now, because there's a possibility. So that works. It's just an example, of course. You can just change it however you want. This steering looks good for my driving. I need some other steer, otherwise I cannot handle it. And obviously you can adjust this as you want. Obviously quality, because aero is also free. That means you can also put it to +15. Doesn't mean that you can change the undertray though. This is just for quality, and these settings right here, you can change anything you want. So brakes are free, aerodynamics are free, rim material stays unchanged, suspension, you can change the ride height and these things, and as we already did, because this is for me quite well. Body molding is obviously allowed. You can now change stuff here, make the trim a little bit different as well, make it wider and whatnot. So this can also obviously change it a little bit more. Oh, I forgot we can also move safety. Chassis section, make it lighter, removing entertainment, removing safety, extra seats, interior, all the good stuff. So that concludes basically our DTM car. So we now have a car that is in the 1100 category. We could easily make the engine up to 420 horsepower if we would go to our base car and set up that base engine to a higher base power. Let's say, I don't know, 260 or something, that we probably could bring up our other thing to 240, right? So if the base car would be higher stroke. This, for example, would totally work, right? In power, that we could probably make it to 260, but you get the idea. Obviously, now we have to check for the material cost, but you get there. So in that case, and if you had a little bit more power there, that you could obviously get in many different ways, you could then make the car very close to the desired power limit of 1100 together with 420 horsepower, which is kind of where we want to go. We're going to go here. Obviously have to look at the initial displacement limit as well. Yeah, and then we also can increase the tire size and make the engine a bit more. So in this case we would have a bit more stroke here in the engine, if that would have been the engine, right? Obviously in your case you're going to make this correct and not just like me. So Yeah, and we're already there. And obviously if you fine tune this and actually put some time on this, you're already gonna be there. Much more easily than me. And if you're in 2% error, like margin rate, it's totally fine. So 420 horsepower right there. Then we would increase the wheels to the correct wheel settings, change the suspension tuning up, so we actually would reach then finally our desired category: 1100 kilo, 420 horsepower, 250, 240 tire size, and we're golden then. So that's that. I hope that explains it, and see you in the race.